Welcome to the Panic Room, where we talk about all things panic-inducing. I am the Queen of Panic. Warning, some episodes may contain content that may be disturbing to others. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let the games begin.
Forced friends. At first, Jeff had refused. Could his mother be serious? Did she really expect him to go over and make friends with Randy? He was still in bed when his mother stopped her incessant humming long enough to tell him to get up and get dressed. Once he learned why, he told her no way in hell. However, his mother was a shrewd manipulator, and she'd know exactly what to do to get the job done. She promised Jeff that if he did this for her, went over and made it work with Randy, that Luke could come home the next day. She'd sandbagged Jeff right into the corner with that one. He'd have no choice but to agree. A short time later, Jeff and his mother were pulling into Randy's driveway. Randy's mother answered the door. "Hello, you must be Jeff," she greeted. Jeff smiled wanly and confirmed that that was, in fact, who he was.
Hello, I'm Sheila Woods. Nice to finally meet you in person,
Jeff's mother announced, barging past her son and extending a hand to Randy's mother. "Sheila, so pleased to meet you. I'm Bridgette Hayden. Sorry to hear that our boys had a little mishap the other day. You know how it is, though, with teenagers. Hormones going crazy and all. Randy never gets into fights, but he explained to me that Jeff and his brother are new to the area and haven't quite learned how we do things in Mandeville yet. Isn't that right, Jeff?" Jeff couldn't resist a small jab.
Yeah, sorry about that, Miss Hayden. Me and Leo had no idea that it was okay for your son and his friends to mess with our bikes without asking.
Bridgette. He gets that mouth from his father. Never knows when to shut up. How about you and I go in and have some coffee, and you can tell me all the great gossip around Mandeville, while our boys get to know each other the right way.
"Randy's in his room, Jeff. Upstairs. Second door to your left. I'm sure you'll hear the sound of his video games or something," Bridgette stated with very little humor to her voice.
Thank you, ma'am,
Jeff answered and entered the house. Jeff knocked and heard Randy answer within.
"Come in."
Hey, so I guess you heard. Our parents want us to hang out, get to know each other.
Jeff stated with little conviction.
"Yeah, that's my mom, alright. She doesn't like drama. Honestly, I think she worries too much. I mean, I'm cool if you're cool."
Jeff sat down on the floor next to Randy and struck up a conversation.
So it turns out, your dad is my dad's boss. He freaked out about the fight in the parking lot. He was actually worried that he'd get fired or something.
My dad is like everyone's boss. I fucking hate it. I think half the kids at my school talk to me because their parents are somehow connected to my dad's firm.
Why do you hate it?
Jeff asked.
Because it's fake. This whole damned town is fake. You'll figure it out as you go, but trust me, everyone who lives here is just trying to pretend there's something else. My parents make me do all this shit, all the trophies and stuff, just so they can brag. That's it.
Jeff smiled.
I know how you feel. My dad had me in a boxing class a year ago, because some coworker of his had a brother that worked at the place or something. As soon as that guy quit though, I was out of that gym the next week.
I wish it was that easy.
Randy responded.
I hate playing baseball, but my dad will sure have me out there again next summer, and the summer afterwards. It's like, he knows I hate it, but wants to make sure I'm out there with his stupid company name on the back of my jersey.
Randy, why did you and your friends fuck with our bikes the other day?
I told you, this town is fake, and boring as shit. There is nothing to do here. We have to find stuff to do. I mean, there are only so many times you can go hang out at the video store, or ride dirt paths in the woods. All the girls here are stuck up. All the stores close early. There's no mall when the movie theater is across town. We were just bored, man. So, Sorry for that, I guess.
It's cool.
Jeff replied.
I guess I'm sorry too. Things went too far.
You mean the fight?
Randy asked.
That shit was actually cool. Those guys, Keith and Troy, they just leech on because of my dad. It's like I told you, I'm pretty sure their parents make them hang out with me.
The afternoon went on, and Jeff soon forgot that this was a mandatory arrangement. He actually started to find himself liking Randy. Sure, their first encounter was a little sketchy, but he was coming around to the guy, finding that he wasn't so bad once his idiot friends were removed from the equation. About an hour later, things took a new turn. Jeff heard the twin pops of 2 car doors shutting in near unison, and then heard the engine start up. He dropped the game controller and peered out of Randy's bedroom window, just in time to see his mother and Randy's mother backing out of the driveway.
Our parents are leaving.
Jeff said.
About time. I figured my mom would eventually talk your mom into going shopping, or going to get coffee, or something like that.
Jeff heard Randy pause the game.
Hey Jeff, come downstairs. I want to show you some cool stuff.
Randy invited and Jeff followed. Randy led Jeff out to the garage. It was hot in there with the main door shut. The garage was well kept though, and Jeff observed stacks of magazines underneath a workbench, as well as tools and various other utility items stacked about. Standing in the small closed-in garage, with the late summer heat lingering about, Jeff began to feel a bit uneasy. Despite the fact that he and Randy had seemed to bond over the last few hours, Jeff couldn't ignore a sense that things were different now that the adults were gone.
What did you want to show me?
Jeff asked.
Hold on, let me get it.
Randy replied, moving the magazines out to reveal a small red box. Jeff watched as Randy removed the box and opened it.
Check it out, my dad's flare gun.
Randy announced and waved the red tubular gun about.
Whoa, be careful with that.
Jeff shouted, more out of shock than real concern.
It's fine, dude. Don't be a pussy. It's not even loaded.
Randy said. However, Jeff watched as he fished out one of the flares from the back compartment. Randy then continued to fiddle with the flare gun, popping it open and loading a flare.
Now it's loaded,
he announced.
My dad showed me how to use this last year when we went out boating. Sometimes I take it out back and shoot flares at the trees. But maybe this time I don't need a tree.
The change in Randy's voice and demeanor was impossible to ignore.
Okay, well, cool gun. Let's get back in the house though. It's hot out here, plus I'm getting hungry. What do you have to eat?
However, as Jeff turned to walk through the small door leading back into the house, his path was suddenly blocked by 2 more familiar faces. Vile intentions.
Where are you going, Jeffy?
The fat kid, Troy, blurted out as he and Keith stepped forward into the garage.
Took you 2 assholes long enough to get here. I've had to babysit this faggot all day.
Randy shouted. A wicked joy was present in his words.
Sorry, Randy, but Keith here had to mow his front lawn before his parents would let him come out,
Troy said, a sheepish tone to his voice.
It's cool. We're here now.
Keith said.
What the fuck is going on?
Jeff asked, staring at Randy. He noticed that Randy still had the flare gun in his hands.
I'll tell you what's going on, Jeff. You owe Keith and Troy an apology for what you did. You sucker punched them and then ran away. You didn't even have the balls to fight them fair. So now, you're going to pay them what you owe.
I'm not going to fight you, okay? I'm done with that shit.
Jeff replied as he glanced about the room for an exit.
You're right about that. You're not going to fight. You're going to stand there and let my boys get their licks in. Then I get mine, and when that's done, you get the fuck out of my house. I'll tell my mom that you got sick and walked home, and after that, if you see us again, you better walk the other way.
I'm not gonna stand here and get hit by you or your friends. So just let me go home, how about that? I'll tell my mom that we're cool and everyone wins, okay?
Jeff asked. Randy then raised the flare gun towards Jeff.
No, you stay, pussy. You stay and take your licks.
Jeff felt that sensation once more. That sick, rich, dark matter that swirled around inside of him. He could taste it now, It was heaven. In his mind, he imagined himself diving into it, swimming in it, letting it swallow him whole. He looked around, and the sensation only grew. He saw Randy, standing there holding the flare gun. It was limp in his hands, though, and the hammer was not cocked back. Jeff knew that Randy had no intention of firing it. He looked over at Keith, skinny and pathetic, a kid born to follow. Troy, fat and sweaty, breathing a bit heavy from his walk over, and of course, in the middle of it all, Jeff himself. He felt that pleasure begin to mix with the rage, forming the perfect product. He tried to avoid sampling it. He knew that only regret would come from indulging in it. However, when it was placed so close, when the aroma and the promise of that sweet, savory flavor was only inches away, Jeff found that he could no more stand against it than a ship in the ocean could stand against a typhoon. Jeff began to smile.
Why are you smiling at me? You queer for me or something?
Randy asked, a slight nervous tinge in his voice.
Am I smiling, Randy? I guess it's because I'm having just so much fun.
Jeff announced, and suddenly lunged towards the unprepared kid holding the flare gun. Jeff struck Randy once in the nose. Randy's arms dropped, yet he kept hold of the flare gun. Jeff, without even needing to look, realized that Troy and Keith had actually taken a step back, instead of advancing as they should have. Jeff delivered another strong blow to Randy's jaw, causing the boy to drop to the floor. Jeff now turned his attention to Troy and Keith, the two tough kids that had yet to actually make so much as a move in his direction. Troy actually backed up a step and stumbled over the stack of magazines that Randy had moved earlier. Jeff took his opportunity and stepped forward, once again introducing Troy's round belly to a fist. Troy tried to stay on his feet, but Jeff's punches, combined with the stumble over of the magazines, caused Troy to fall back, landing hard and striking his head on the concrete slab that was the garage's floor. Keith was actually trying to back away. However, Jeff was currently standing between him and the only exit to the garage, since the carport door was closed. Jeff took 2 quick steps towards the skinny kid and felt the most intense joy at seeing Keith stagger backwards, knocking his back into the wall. That perfect blend of pleasure, control, and rage had come together. Jeff felt as though he was floating above the world. Somewhere in his mind, he knew there would be hell to pay for this, but at that exact moment in time, he couldn't care less. He didn't care about Lou, he didn't care about being arrested, and he didn't care if his dad got fired. All he cared about in that fraction of time was hurting Keith. Keith tried to make a run for it, hoping to squeeze through the small gap between Jeff and the door. However, Jeff clipped him a hard right hand to his face, causing Keith to stagger back again. Jeff could see that his knees were buckled, and he took full advantage. He moved in, pinning Keith to a wall, and began to deliver blow after blow to the skinny kid's stomach. Keith's eyes became as large as saucers. Once satisfied, Jeff stepped back and watched in demonic glee as Keith slowly slid down the wall, gasping for air. Randy got back to his feet, but seemed to have no idea what to do.
We done now, Randy? We good? Or do you and your friends need more?
Jeff mocked.
No more. We're cool.
How about you assholes?
Jeff asked.
It was Randy's idea.
Keith said weakly.
Yeah, man. We didn't even want to.
Troy agreed. The debate may have continued, but the sound of a returning car broke the tension.
Oh shit, my mom is back.
Randy shouted, his voice cracking in a humorous way. It seemed that the previous tough guy had all but shrunk back to a scared child.
So, we'll just say that we're all hanging out.
Keith replied.
No, the fucking flare gun. If she finds out that I messed with it, I'm screwed.
So put it back.
Jeff suggested. The sensation of rage was fading again, and he felt control returning.
Yeah, grab the magazines, please.
Randy begged. Jeff found that he would rather liked that tone, the begging. Whipped dog mentality. Jeff was paying no attention to Randy. He was down on the floor calmly gathering the magazines. He didn't really care if Randy got in trouble or not. However, if his mother returned and found trouble, he feared that Lou may not be able to return home as promised. Everything else happened in a flash, both literally and figuratively. Randy, now in a panic over the trouble he'd be in if he was caught playing with the flare gun, began to sweat. As his hands frantically clawed over the gun, his thumbs pushed the hammer back, unintentionally. He didn't even notice that the gun was cocked. He was turning it over in his hands, trying to quickly disarm it. He then heard the sound of keys in the front door. He knew he had only seconds now to hide it. Everything else happened in slow motion. The gun slipped from Randy's sweaty hands as he'd attempted to rotate it once more. He saw it fall to the floor, seeming to float to the ground rather than fall. Jeff, busy stacking the magazines, had only enough time to register Randy's shocked gasp. He turned to look in the boy's direction, just in time to see the bright red flare gun hit the floor. The gun discharged, launching a speeding ball of fire directly into Jeff's face. Jeff felt the hot flash of heat and pain tear across the left side of his face. After the initial registry of agony, there was no more thinking. Jeff began to scream, clutching the left side of his face and rolling around on the floor. For a while he forgot everything, as he was plunged into that dark, rich syrup once more, the rage almost serving to dull the pain. When he finally did come to a stable level of alertness, he realized he was in a hospital room. Half of his face was bandaged. He knew that much. He wanted to open his eye and speak, let his family know he was awake, but the drugs still had a firm hold. He was awake, but not quite yet functioning. He could hear several familiar voices, though. The birth of the killer.
Is he going to be okay, Doctor?
Jeff's mother asked.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Your son will be fine. However, he will have a lengthy road to recovery, and will need your support. The flare struck his face and had caused third-degree burns on his left side.
How bad is the eye?
Jeff's father asked.
Hard to say at this point. He'll need to see an optometrist for further review, but the damage appears quite severe.
And his face? What about his face?
Jeff's mother asked, sounding deeply concerned.
Well, we were able to clean and treat the injury in time, so you've no concern for infection or anything of that matter. We'll want him on antibiotics for a while, and he'll need to have the wound cleaned and dressed on a regular basis. But all in all, your son got very lucky. The damage could have been far more severe.
Doctor,
His mother began again.
what if there is permanent damage? What do we do about that?
As I said, an optometrist will have to examine the eye.
You're not listening. Not the eye, his face. What do we do to correct his face?
She demanded.
Well, ma'am, we have treated his face, like I said. There shouldn't be a risk of infection so long as you...
She cut him off again.
Not the infection. His appearance. What can we do for that?
Miss Woods, that's hardly a concern at this point. Once he is healed and back on his feet, you can possibly explore some plastic surgery to repair some of the damage, but honestly, right now, we can't waste concern on how he looks. What is important is that your son is healthy. He can expect to be back home in a few days, maybe sooner.
Jeff's dad spoke again.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Can we have some time alone, please? My wife and I need to speak.
Certainly.
The doctor replied.
Liu, why don't you go down to the hospital cafeteria and get yourself a snack?
Matt Woods suggested.
But I want to be here in case Jeff wakes up.
Lou replied.
Liu, they told us that Jeff is heavily medicated. They don't expect him to wake up anytime tonight. So, just go, and if he does come around, we'll have you paged.
Matt replied. Jeff heard the door open and close as Lou exited. His parents both let out a long, shaky sigh, but Jeff was starting to believe it was not a sigh of relief, but rather one of stress.
We're going to have to homeschool him now, Matt. That's just what it's going to be. We're going to have to keep him home.
He heard his mother rant, her voice sounding frantic.
What? I mean, he probably won't be able to start school right on time, but I doubt he'll miss a whole year.
His father responded, trying to maintain a calmer voice.
I'm not talking about that, Matt. I'm not worried about him missing a week or two of school. I mean his face, Matt. You heard what the doctor said. His face is going to be... disfigured.
Sheila argued back.
We don't even know the full extent of the damage yet, Sheila. It could be minor. It could possibly heal. And you heard what he said. Plastic surgery could be an option in time.
In time? What kind of time? A year? 2 years? And what about in the meantime? People are going to see him and they're going to talk. Is that what you want? He's going to be a pariah. You think anyone is going to want to have him around their kids?
Jeff was hearing all of this, just letting it soak in, slowly. As his mind absorbed the words, he felt that rage return. Sick, rich, dark, that syrup of raw, primal emotion. He wanted to scream at his mother, to tell her to shut up, that he was the one lying here, his face half burned, blind in one eye. All thanks to her forcing him to go over to Randy's house. He wanted to ask her why she left and why she went off to go shopping or have her nails done or whatever it was that she did. He wanted to know why she'd leave him alone with a kid who just days before tried to jump him and his brother. He wanted to know how she could care more about his appearance than the fact that he was lying in the hospital. However, there was still so much more that he wanted to know as well. He wanted to know how much more his mother hated him. How much more she saw him now as a, how did she put it, a pariah? He wanted to continue to swim in the thick pool of dark hatred that was starting to form from the rage and anger. That was a new one now. Before it was anger, then it was anger mixed with pleasure, but now it was anger mixed with hatred. And while he certainly longed to be free of it, while he most certainly preferred the false sense of love and concern he believed he'd heard from her before, he also wanted to test it out a bit more. He also began to wonder, how well would this new recipe blend with pleasure? How would it feel? Matt Woods began to speak again.
I just can't believe he shot himself in the face with a flare gun. I always thought Jeff was more responsible than that.
Don't even get me started on that.
Sheila replied.
I couldn't believe it when Randy and his friends explained to the medics and police how it all happened. Randy was just trying to show Jeff around his house and wanted to show him the collection of magazines his dad kept in the garage. You know, boys, he was probably hoping that a couple of Playboys would be in there or something. Then he said Jeff found the box containing the flare gun and just wouldn't stop playing around with it. You should have heard those other boys, Matt. They told me that they practically begged Jeff to just put it down before he got hurt. But he just had to show off. I just don't know where we went wrong, Matt. I thought us moving out here to a nice, quiet neighborhood would make everyone happy. Jeff, though, he just wants to fight us on everything.
And while all that came together in Jeff's mind, he continued to swim in that black ichor of hatred and rage. The morphine drip added a nice touch of euphoria. Jeff could almost see himself plunging into the syrupy waters of hatred and emerging changed. Each dip brought him so much twisted pleasure. And that was when he finally understood. He could sample the pleasure now. Not because he was enjoying what was happening, but because he knew he could enjoy what was to come. Just as the doctor had predicted, Jeff was scheduled to go home a few days later. During his time at the hospital, he never asked to see his face. It wasn't until the last day that he finally asked for a mirror. The nurse had come in and changed his bandages, as was the routine. She was a pleasant woman. She spoke to him, asked him how he was doing. He enjoyed her visits. So, on the final day, when she arrived to clean and dress his face, he asked to see himself. "Are you sure, sweetheart? Would you like me to call your parents first?" she asked.
No, thank you. I think I want to see it for myself first, without them standing over me.
Jeff replied. "I understand." She replied honestly, without a hint of pretension. Once the bandages were off, she handed him a small hand mirror. "Would you like me to step out of the room?" she asked. Jeff ignored her and looked at himself, taking stock of the damage. Sure enough, his face was a mess. The entire left side, at least. The flare struck him traveling upwards and burned a scar into his left cheek that extended to his eye. At first glance, it almost looked like he was smiling on that side. The scar was still bright red, and burn tissue spread out on either side. Once it arrived at his eye, the news did not get any better. His eye was white, just a lifeless bulb plugged into his face. He closed his right eye and found that he could see nothing from his left side at all. The scar continued up to his left side of his forehead. The damage was less severe there, however. The hair on that side of his face was burned off, leaving a few strands to stick up here and there. "Sorry, sweetie, but I have to put clean bandages on," she told him. Jeff smiled.
It's okay. There will be plenty of time for me to admire myself later.
"Go to sleep." There was no joy from his parents on the ride home or upon arrival. They spoke very little, and there was a tension in the car that simply wouldn't fade out. As for Lou, he was thrilled that his brother was okay, but he didn't know what to say concerning the damage to his face. So, after asking a few questions about the accident and the recovery, he fell silent as well. They walked into their home at dusk, and Lou asked about dinner. He suggested they let Jeff pick a place to celebrate his return home.
Just go to sleep. Both of you boys. Go to sleep.
Sheila remarked. She and her husband both retreated to their bedrooms as well, to argue or feel sorry for themselves, who knew. Jeff and Lou didn't speak much that night. Jeff spent most of the evening staring at himself in the mirror. He kept pulling back the bandages and looking at the scars. Lou wanted to see them too, but felt like it might be imprudent to ask.
I'm glad you're home, Jeff. I really missed you. And I'm glad you're okay.
Lou said to Jeff as he stared at himself.
I'm not okay, Leo. And neither are you. None of us are really. There's a sickness here. The only difference is, now my sickness shows on the outside as well.
Jeff replied, his voice as flat as that on the answering machine.
What are you talking about?
Lou asked.
One day, you'll see it too. This is what happens, though. This is what happens when it all falls down.
Jeff said, still peeking behind his bandages.
Jeff, I don't know what you're trying to say.
Lou responded. Jeff didn't reply, though, and after several moments, Lou left him alone. Lou went down to his parents' bedroom and knocked on the door.
What is it?
The voice of his mother asked.
Mom, I think Jeff is acting weird. You may want to come talk to him.
Go away, Liu. Leave your mother alone.
His father's voice answered. Lou, being young, had no other ideas, so he returned to his own bedroom. He didn't know that those would be the last words he'd ever hear his parents speak to him. That night, Sheila and Matt Woods awoke together, both being light sleepers. It took a little to bring them out of slumber. The sudden removal of their blanket, as it was snatched from the bed, did the trick just fine. They awoke to see a small light coming from the half bath that was situated in their master bedroom. The door was cracked only slightly, and the light source was weak. They could make out a human shape standing over their bed, though.
What? What is going on?
Sheila grumbled. As her vision came into focus, they realized that their son was standing before them. Matt reached over and flipped on the lamp next to their bed. Jeff was standing there, his bandages off, his disfigured face beaming down on them, with a long kitchen knife clutched in his right hand.
What are you doing, son?
Matt asked, his mind still trying to shake out the cobwebs of sleep.
He's got a knife!
Sheila screamed, grabbing at her husband's arm. Matt kept his composure, though.
Sheila, it's probably the painkillers. He likely got up and got disoriented. Relax, for Christ's sake.
Jeff tilted his head to one side, still not speaking. He stared hard at his father, slowly bringing the knife up, ensuring that he saw it well.
Son, what are you doing?
Matt asked.
Scaring you.
Jeff replied, with no emotion in his voice.
Matt, do something!
Sheila pleaded.
Okay, son. I realize you've been going through a lot, but you need to go back to bed. I'm going to call the doctor in the morning and...
Jeff moved quickly across to his father's side of the bed, his head moving about, alternating between a normal-looking young man and the deformed ghoul that had been lurking in the shadows.
Okay, son. You've scared me. Is that what you wanted?
Matt asked, adjusting to the middle of the bed to put distance between himself and his son.
Good. Now I can start hurting you.
Jeff spoke again with no emotion. His father had time to utter a single syllable, most likely to ask another question, to try and reason with his son. Jeff, however, gave him time to do no more than that. He lunged onto the bed, driving the knife into his father's stomach. Matt attempted to fend off Jeff, but the wound to his midsection rendered him into shock, and his arms fell to the side. Jeff could hear his mother screaming, but paid no mind. He wanted to finish with his father first. Removing the knife, Jeff stabbed down into his stomach 3 more times, quickly. His father gasped and coughed up blood. His body jerked and twitched each time the knife found its mark. After the 3rd time, Matt Woods lay still. Sheila had backed up against the headboard of the bed. She wanted to climb down and make a run for it, but she'd balled herself up in between the headboard and the end table. In her frantic state of terror and confusion, she couldn't figure out how to do something as simple as dismount a bed.
Jeff, why? Why are you doing this to us?
She asked feebly.
Randy started it. You must have known that, but you ignored it. Leo had a busted lip. You must have seen that, but you ignored it. I was shot in the face with a flare gun, but you believed Randy. Why? So you could fit in?
Jeff asked in a low, almost growling voice.
No, baby. I believed you. It was just your father's job. And we're new here. And... oh, God. Jeff, please.
His mother begged.
Tell me about homeschool, Mom. Tell me all about how you don't want to send me out in public because of my face. Tell me how none of the other kids will want to be my friend. And how none of the parents will want to be yours. Tell me about that, Mom. Tell me how nice it's going to be you homeschooling me.
Jeff, please. I was just stressed. I was worried about you, that's all. Please, I love you.
Mom, I think you should take your own advice, you know. What you told Leo when we got home tonight? He wanted to do something nice to welcome me home. And do you remember what you told us to do instead?
Jeff asked, as he now crawled over, cornering his mother on the bed.
What did I say?
She asked, the question coming out barely a whisper.
Go to sleep!
Jeff snarled and drove the knife into his mother's chest. He stabbed her over and over again, and as he did, he finally found that perfect recipe, that heavenly blend. That rage, hate, and pleasure, all mixed into one perfect formula, and for a while Jeff became lost in it all. Jeff opened his brother's bedroom door, not surprised to find his brother asleep. He had dozed off with headphones in, so he slept through all this shouting. That was fine with Jeff. It was easier that Lou not have to hear all of that. Jeff sat down on his brother's bed and nudged him slightly. It took a moment, but Lou finally opened his eyes and looked up. Jeff removed his earphones for him.
You're free now, Leo.
He spoke softly.
Jeff, what? What are you talking about?
Lou mumbled, still half asleep.
You'll see in the morning. I just wanted to let you know I love you. You've been my best friend. Remember that, okay?
Thanks. I love you too. Now, let me go back to sleep.
Lou replied, already dozing off again. Jeff smiled and stood up. As he left the room, he looked back at his sleeping brother one last time, before he vanished into the night. If you would like to submit your stories, please check out the Panic Within subreddit. I go over those stories that are submitted, and I go ahead and I narrate them. I say go over, but I narrate all of them. So if you're interested in something like that, go ahead and take a look in the description, and you'll find the link there. We also have a Discord. You can come and hang out and get spooky with me and other narrators. We post new content, up-and-coming videos, promotions, and we also just hang out and chat, and you can come and hang out with us there. if you're interested in that. Link is also in the description below. And last but not least, if you are interested in doing a collab with the King of Panic or myself, you can absolutely reach out. If you're another creator, you can do one on our channel. We can do one with you. We are completely open for collab as of right now. Looking for new stuff to do and very excited for anybody who reaches out. The best way to do that is through Twitter or Discord. I do check Instagram and I will get back. It just might take a little longer because I'm super bad at that, but I've been trying to be better. So if you do reach out there, even if it takes a couple days, I'll be there. But like I said, we're excited. So please definitely reach out and we're looking forward to it. And as always, thank you for visiting the Panic Room. You have successfully made it to the next portion of your tour. Please stay tuned for your next prompt. Click the like button and subscribe to receive notifications for when the next portion of your tour is ready to join. Thank you for watching. Don't let the panic drown you.